We are looking at the east staging yards of the layout. These yards represent all the destinations in Chicago. It's basically the eastern terminus of the Union Pacific Railroad. There are 11 tracks here. This particular train is coming out of track 5, and it is a westbound train headed for Global 3 in Rochelle. Coming out of the staging yards, the first location that the train will travel through is River Forest. This section of River Forest is an elevated section modeled after the prototype. Here's a couple of pictures. These particular locomotives are Fox Valley SD70 ACEs. Fox Valley makes some really good locomotives. I really have been happy with these. They are very smooth running. You could kind of hear them grinding away as they went by, but they have a good even sound and run very smoothly. Here you see from River Forest is heading through some trees. It's actually going through a wall. I have no trouble cutting holes in walls when I build a layout. So this is on the other side of the wall, and it's going across the Des Plaines River. Here's some prototype pictures of the Des Plaines River. After going across the Des Plaines River, you have the city of Maywood. As you can see, not much finishing work done here yet, just the basic bench work, scenery shell, track, and ballast. From Maywood, it goes around a 90-degree turn and then heads into Proviso. Those Union Pacific locos were the yard engines for Proviso, waiting in the drill track, the Proviso drill track. This is Proviso Yard. There are 11 tracks here, plus a bypass track. You see a couple of warehouses. This again was modeled after Proviso a little bit, as much as possible actually. Here's some prototype photos. And this is still part of Proviso. Goes around a little bit of a turn here and goes by the Proviso engine facilities. In the foreground, you can see some excursion trains that I have on the layout, plus a metro train. We do run a commuter service on the Geneva sub. And then, of course, you have the engine facilities in the background, modeled after the prototype. That was my computer, by the way, making a sound, unplanned. All right, from Proviso then, it goes through another wall, another hole I cut in the wall, and goes through probably the most finished area of the layout, and that's Elmhurst. I've had a chance to put in roads and crossings and metro station. Try to model the roads and layout of this section after the prototype of Elmhurst. The station is actually the Cottle kit modeled after the Schaumburg station, but I've adapted it to here for Elmhurst. It's a little bit bigger than the actual Elmhurst station. All right, from Elmhurst it runs through a little bit of in less industrial area, I guess you could say, and then into Wheaton. Wheaton's probably the least finished area of the layout. Wow, that really sounds loud. They are not that loud. I think it's just because it got close to the camera. But as you can see, Wheaton is basically just some flat area with some buildings I set down. Here you see the train going, the intermodal train going past a manifest freight train. If you look in the distance, you can see the green signal just turned to red. The particular train that we're watching right now is the IG2COI. That's I for Intermodal, G1 for Global 1 in Chicago, where it originates. And then COI is its destination, which is City of Industry, California. Now the train originates in G1, but actually in Canada. Here you see it going across the Rock River, going through another hole in the wall. That hole, by the way, represents about 50 unmodeled miles, because now from Wheaton we go into Rochelle right away. So that was the Rock River, which actually is located somewhere else, but it's in the vicinity. But I placed it there just because I thought it looked good. And so it goes from the Rock River crossing around a turn and then into Rochelle itself. And Rochelle also is not too far along, although I do have a lot of structures that have been scratch built for Rochelle. You can see the overpass in the distance, as well as the water tower, the railroad yard, the BNSF crossing, a number of other buildings from that area, but no roads and trees and other details. Here the train is going by the BNSF interchange track. And that also is modeled after the prototype. There is a little yard there in Rochelle that serves as the BNSF interchange. That structure there is a Del Monte warehouse. The modeled building is a lot smaller than the actual building. Right then, west of Rochelle, and not very far at all, you have the entrance into the Global 3, which it has a stop here, and as you can see, it's going past a coal train, and it's going to take the crossover to go from the main line into the Global 3 yard. Now, as you can see there's a little bit of a decline there. The yard is a scale 20 inches lower than the main line, so you can see it go downgrade. It's about a 1.5% downgrade into the yard. And here you can see the entire scope of the yard. So as I was saying, the train, these cars actually on the prototype originate from Canada. So Canadian National brings a train from Canada, Ontario somewhere, to Chicago. And one of the reasons Global 3 was built was to enable trains to bypass Chicago and avoid the delays there in Chicago. So the Canadian National train goes from Ontario and then bypasses Chicago and actually goes all the way to Global 3. Now in actuality, and I may do this eventually, the UP will put a Union Pacific locomotive at the head of the Canadian National trains because the engineers have to have in-cab signals, which the Canadian National engines do not have. So I may model that, but for now I just have the Canadian National trains, or Canadian National locomotives. All right, so here's the entire train in Global 3. And as you can see, the train is much longer than the actual storage yard here at Global 3. So we have to find a way to get the Canadian National locomotives to the engine facilities. So here is how that's done. It has to basically clear these switches in order to be able to make the trek back to the engine facilities, which are just to your right in this shot here. So the first thing the train does once it's completely in the yard is it backs the train up into the drill track of the yard, and that will allow it then to clear those turnouts and be able to run around the cars to head towards the engine facilities. So this is as far as the Canadian National locomotives will go, and it's at Global 3 that the engines are swapped out for UP engines that will then take the train all the way to City of Industry, California. And before it was uncoupled, you see it had to take out the slack a little bit. Okay, got them uncoupled. And we're able to pull away from the train and throw the turnouts and make our way around the train. Now, safety is very important on the Union Pacific Railroad Geneva subdivision. So before we back up, I have to turn on the headlights for safety. We don't want any of our N-scale people getting run over. All right, now that it's cleared the front end of the train, it will need to clear the back end of the train. You can see a lot of the containers that I have. And as you can see, it's not able to clear the back end of the train because we just backed it up. So we're still blocked from getting to the engine facilities. This is a good shot of the MyJack loading and unloading facility. All right, so in order for the CN locomotives to clear the back end of the train, the Global 3 yard crew must couple to the train and pull it forward so that the CN locomotives can clear the back and make it to the engine facilities. You can see a good view of the entrance and exit facilities of Global 3. To the left you have the let's see, that's the exit is to the left, and then to the right there is the entrance, and you have the video sheds, and then followed by the booth that the truckers check in at. Still have a lot of work to do on that. Need to put all the concrete barriers down. I have a bunch more on order from Shapeways. I'm going to be interested to see what those are like. And need to put in the crossing arms and check in details at the booths. But it's definitely coming along nicely. Alright, so here the yard engines is pulling the train forward so that the CN locomotives can clear the back end of the train. This long intermodal train is about all that these two GP units can handle, but they do pretty good. Alright, now that the back end of the train is clear, the CN locomotives can make their way to the engine facilities. So a whole lot of work to do on the engine facilities. As you can see, all I have is the engine house. Need to put down some paving and lots of details, storage tanks and fueling stations and sanding stations and all that stuff. This is a good view of the use of photographs for the backdrop. And at Global 3, it's basically surrounded by cornfields. So that was the only way I could come up with to, really be able to depict the cornfields as realistically as possible. In the foreground, of course, they're doing wheat, which there is some of that also in Rochelle. Still need to do some touch up here also. A lot of white plaster showing through the scenery. I need to touch that up. Alright, so the CN units basically just wait here at the engine facilities for a eastbound train that will be headed in the other direction, obviously, later in the operating session. Alright, the yard crew has finished dropping off and picking up cars at Global 3, and now we have some UP locomotives that will take over and take the train on the rest of its journey westward towards City of Industry, California. Not gonna, in this particular operations video, I'm not not showing the actual dropping off and picking up cars that the yard crew does. That will be part of a later operations video, where it'll depict just some of the yard operations that the yard crew does here at Global 3. That was my hand, obviously, throwing the turnout. You can see there's 3 places there for turnout switches for the 3 turnouts at the one off of the drill track, and then the 2 in the actual engine facility section. Global 3 has a drill track on both ends of the yard that's long enough to pull 3 to 4, 3 to 5 unit well cars. The yard crew has pulled the train forward so that the locomotives could clear the back of the train here. This is a good shot of the overall yard. You got the MyJack machinery for loading and unloading the containers. And then you have the I forget what the name of that unit is there to work with the trailers or containers. Alright, so the locomotives have to wait here because they are blocked by cars here. So the yard crew will push the cars back so that the road locomotives can clear the front of the train and be able to couple to the train and get ready to move back onto the main line. Not sure why I sighed there so loudly. Alright, almost clear. A little more, a little more. There, that should be good. Right, the yard crew pulls clear of the train, and they'll need to pull pretty far back because they have to leave room for the road locomotives to be able to clear that turnout. Oh, looks like they disappeared. Now we can see them back there, yeah. Alright, so everything's clear, and the locomotives can now pull towards the front of the train. Looks like we have a double stack train going by on the main line. Rochelle has about 80 to 100 trains a day going through. So if you ever get a chance to get to Rochelle, Illinois to do some train watching, you can almost be sure of seeing some trains. Only time I would recommend that you avoid is the rush hour time, because they do kind of cut down on the freight traffic during rush hour when the metro trains run. Not to Rochelle, but they run in the suburbs, so it just cuts down the traffic all the way across the sub. Alright, going to be coupled up here pretty soon. One thing I've been doing on my layout is that after I couple up to a train and have it ready to go out, I'll wait 10 minutes before I actually leave. That's 10 actual minutes to simulate the train airing up the air brakes and getting everything ready before it goes. I don't know if you saw there, but the headlight was turned out before it headed out. Alright, so that wasn't 10 minutes, obviously, but we'll pretend that we did wait 10 minutes. And train has gotten clearance to get on the main line. And so now it's going back again onto the main line from the yard trackage. And again, this is a incline of 20 inches back onto the main line. The difference is actually 1/8 of an inch, which I'm pretty sure scales out to 20 inches. And I think I figured it out. It's about a 1.5% to 2% incline there, but definitely adds some interest to actually, having the main line elevated from the secondary trackage. All right, from Global 3, we head to the first town west of Rochelle, which is Franklin Grove. Actually, there's a couple other ones, Ashton, and maybe another one. But Franklin Grove had more industries to model, so that's what we have depicted. And so there you have it going through Franklin Grove. And then from Franklin Grove, we head to the Mississippi River. This is another pretty big jump or skipping of trackage. From Franklin Grove to Mississippi River is probably at least 50 to 60 miles. So we're skipping a lot of prototype trackage, obviously. But the train now will head into Franklin Grove. It's going to be passing a crude oil tank train, bringing oil from the fracking being done out west to refineries in Chicago. So by the time it gets this far, it's got some pretty good speed. Now, I have to be honest, usually the trains don't go this fast across the Mississippi River Bridge. But, oh well. I think that's about a scale 35 to 40 miles per hour. They probably go more like 15 to 20. And then after crossing the Mississippi River, you have Clinton, Iowa. Not too much done here. But this is the very western end of the layout. And then from Clinton, then it heads into the staging yards. And this is the west staging yard. Now on the layout, the train, as it continues through the west staging yard here, it will end up at the east staging yard. So the two staging tracks are connected to each other, which allows me to do a lot of continuous running. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing the trains This particular train, the IG2COI, went across the Union Pacific Railroad Geneva Subdivision. Thanks so much for watching.